Any man who says he's an American but something else also isn't an American at all. We have room but for one flag, the American flag. We have room for but one language here, and that is the English language. And we have room for but one sole loyalty, and that is a loyalty to the American people. End of quote. That's how we've created one great nation from all the nations of the world. The largest group of immigrants now comes from Mexico. A recent RAND study discovered that during the 20th century, while our immigration laws were actually enforced, assimilation worked, and it made possible the swift attainment of the American dream for millions of immigrants seeking to escape the conditions of Mexico. That is the broader meaning of our nation's motto, E pluribus unum, from many people, one people, the American people. But there's now an element in our political structure that seeks to undermine that concept of E pluribus unum. It seeks to hyphenate Americans, to develop linguistic divisions, to assign rights and preferences based on race and ethnicity, and to elevate devotion to foreign ideologies and traditions, while at the same time denigrating American culture, American values, and American founding principles. In order to do so, they know that they have to stop the process of assimilation. And in order to do that, they have to undermine our immigration laws. It is an outrage that a foreign head of state would appear in and actively seek to do so. And it is a disgrace that he would be cheered on from the left wing of the White House and from many Democrats here in Congress. Arizona has not adopted a new immigration law. All it has done is to enforce existing law that this president refuses to enforce. It's hardly a radical policy to suggest that if an officer on a routine traffic stop encounters a driver with no driver's license, no passport, and who doesn't speak English, that maybe that individual might be here illegally. And to those who say we must reform our immigration laws, I reply we don't need to reform them, we need to enforce them. Just as every other government does, just as Mexico does. Above all, this is a debate of, by, and for the American people. If President Calderon wishes to participate in that debate, I invite him to obey our immigration laws, apply for citizenship, do what 600,000 legal immigrants to our nation are doing right now, learn our history and our customs, and become an American, and then he will have every right to participate in that debate. Until then, I would politely invite him to have the courtesy, while a guest of this Congress, to abide by the fundamental rules of diplomacy between civilized nations, not to meddle in each other's domestic debates. I yield back.
Not that I love the McClintock guy. I don't even like some of the stuff he does, but at least he stood up and he was an American saying, you know what makes our country cool is the Bill of Rights and your right to keep and bear arms. Because, you know, when a person can't protect themselves, then maybe they learn to be, you know, a trained victim. Why is it we teach our children to duck and cover and hide, you know? Oh, there's a gunman in the school. We're all going to what? Stay in the room like, you know, like Columbine or like Virginia Tech? We need people that are smart and strong, okay? Not people who cower in corners. Boy, that's a whole nother story. So anyway, a little more news. You'll love this one. Don't believe me. Look at what Gates is funding. This is, you know, remember Bill and Melinda, they got money. Bill Gates Foundation is financing nano vaccines that can be sprayed on people without their knowledge. Well, gee, that's good. Let's spray people with vaccines without their knowledge, okay? The nanoparticles would be absorbed through the skin and activate upon contact with sweat. You don't have to worry. This is all for public health. Surely they wouldn't use the technology to vaccinate people against their will. Boy, that couldn't happen. But once again, don't believe me. You got to see it for yourself. Okay, how about this one? Obama claims full responsibility and authority for fixing the Gulf oil spill, but blames pre-existing corrupt relationships between government regulators and oil companies. Boy. You know, the pot calling the kettle black. It gets better. He blamed BP for using toxic dispersants instead of safer alternatives. I agree with him. Both things really bad. You know, both things, truth to them. I'll give him that, okay? But it's funny how this this spill thing happens right after Halliburton comes on the platform. It's even interesting when you find Goldman Sachs did what? They sold $300 million worth of BP shares, 44% of their holdings, 2 days before. They always seem to benefit, don't they? What do you know about Goldman Sachs? They're all in our government now, aren't they? But that's stuff for another show. We'll be quick. Okay, how about this one? A private company is building detention facilities across the United States of America, allegedly to house illegal immigrants. Interesting, huh? Okay, hold on. The administrative branch of the federal government is sponsoring this program while at the same time pushing amnesty. Yeah, they're all mad at Arizona. They want amnesty, right? With Mexico. And they bring the president up and he says, oh, my people. You know, well, if they're his people, why don't they go back to his country? So anyway, so there no longer will be any illegal aliens. That's interesting. So what's the real reason for the prisons? Yeah, and if you don't believe me and you want to check the facts, find out, type in Hardin, Montana. Weren't they building prisons up there? Yeah, they don't even have prisoners, but they're building prisons. That's important. The poorest county in the state, but that's all another deal. All right, here's a little bit of 9/11 Zen. You're familiar with 9/11. I call it a false flag event because when you add it all up, there was no trial, okay, and the evidence doesn't add up. And once again, you had who? You had Buzzy Krongard, the old CIA guy. It was his, what do you call it, brokerage company that did the put options on United and American Airlines, those being 3 or 4 times greater than any ones in history, just right before 9/11. Who benefited from 9/11? You really think it was people in caves? So here's a little 9/11, and this has to do with Building 7. Watch the end of the show in the credits. You can watch Building 7 collapse. Building 7 wasn't hit by a plane, and it was the third building to completely fall into its own footprint. So anyway, here's a little piece, a little Zen from the Better Bad News. I find out that they're right more or less, you know, half of the time.
Welcome to Better Bad News.
This year, the Tribute in Light Memorial will include a new third beam of light honoring the memory of Barry Jennings, a New York City official who was trapped in Building 7 for several hours and who died from complications due to his testimony with regard to the explosions.
When the explosion happened, it blew us back. The explosion was beneath me. I was trapped in there for several hours. The firefighter that took us down kept saying, do not look down. And I kept saying, why? He said, do not look down. And we were stepping over people. And you know you can feel when you're stepping over people.
Barry Jennings said when he was trying to escape Building 7, he could tell there were bodies under his feet. That third light beam should always have been included. Lives were lost in all 3 buildings.
Why did it take so long to get the third light beam added to the Tribute in Light Memorial at Ground Zero?
They don't teach history anymore.
That's because you can have democracy with an educated public. If we had an educated public, if we know how the 110th floor of the World Trade Center got down to the lobby in 9 seconds. Something to do with the rate of acceleration of falling objects.
This is high school math. How could anyone figure it out?
I think you make a valid point. Putting up only 2 light beams when 3 buildings fell is disinformation.
But they shouldn't have waited until 2010 to finish it. It was deliberately stalled. I want to know why.
I was there when they turned on all the 3 beams to test the power supply, to see how many searchlights would be needed for Building 7.
I like twin light beams better because it leaves less of a carbon footprint. We just need to recycle more.
Barry Jennings died of complications from having witnessed the explosions.
Why did that building come down? And I knew why it came down, because of the explosions.
Well, there's a problem with that testimony, yes. The National Institute of Standards and Technology says that there was no evidence of explosions. So a few days before the final report was released, Barry Jennings drops dead.